Hey guys, it's Oliver. Hope you're doing well. Don't mind my hair. I'm just in San Francisco. Just went for a bike ride to check out the Golden Gate Bridge. And I just wanted to say thank you very much to Philip McKernan, who agreed to come on for an interview with me. It was a real pleasure. Philip, if you don't know him, he is this wacky guy from Ireland, a personal growth champion, and he's somebody that I've been working with for a number of years. I've been to a number of his experiences now, and I wanted to have a conversation with him just to go over some of the ideas that have been going through my head from conversations that I've been having with clients and friends and different things going on like that. And I really hope that you guys get something extremely valuable out of it. I know you will. I would love to have him back. And if you please definitely show him some support. Check out his YouTube channel. I'll put a link to it below. Subscribe to his blog. And if you do find value in this, definitely like, share, and I hope that you subscribe. And we will be having a few more guests, a lot more guests, I hope, in 2014 in the new year, to have a lot more, so we have a bigger spectrum of ideas, of insight, of wisdom for you and your growth in the new year. So here it is, guys. Philip McKernan, The Power of Your Story. Enjoy. This is Oliver Manalese. I hope you guys are doing really well. I'm very grateful to have Mr. Philip McKernan here. And Philip, thank you very much for coming on. And besides all the technical difficulties with Skype, hopefully we can get this interview going smoothly. How's everything
Cool.
going with you?
Things are going really well. I mean, myself and technology are not the greatest friends in the world, but at least we're talking now, which is good.
Excellent. So I know that you had just came back from your Give and Grow, but before we get into that, there's a lot of people that might be listening or watching right now that have not been exposed to some of your work. I mean, I've taken base camp twice now with you. I went to Ireland last year and have been part of your experiences, and my friends, a lot of them have been part of your experiences as well. So if you can give a little bit of background on who you are, that'd be great.
Cool. Honestly, Oliver, I appreciate that. To me, when it comes to something like this and interviews like this, I'm probably more concerned, right or wrong, with kind of delivering as much value as I can to you and your followers or clients or individuals who follow you out of interest and are interested in joining. Something that is going to grow them as a person. So, I know that's probably not what you maybe expected to hear, but that's kind of typically how I approach these things. And then I always trust that in turn, if anyone ever has any interest in my work in any capacity, good, bad, or indifferent, then they'll act upon that and so on. But I'll just do a very brief. I mean, obviously, I'm from Ireland, hence the accent. I've had my own particular story, growing up and my own challenges, whether it's on a personal level or a business level, and trying to integrate what it is I want to do personally with what I want to do professionally, and trying to align those, which has been one of the most challenging things for me, and I see it challenging for everybody else out there in the world as well. And I think I migrated into the world of, if you want to call it personal growth, human transformation, all that kind of stuff. I mean, I don't really have a term on it myself, other than the fact that I support people in some shape or form, take on the journey that I took on. And I haven't arrived at some special point and place in my life. I'm on it. It's just evolving, and I'm, evolving as I grow as an individual. And it's really supporting people to do the same thing, and really just finding more meaning, through living a more aligned, authentic existence, which for some sounds, fluffy and soft and cuddly. For others, they actually understand and get it, and that's essentially what I do. And how I do that is through different live experiences, which has become kind of the speciality. And I'm very grateful for people like yourself and other people who step in and trust me, and trust my approach and my work, which is definitely sometimes a little bit different. But hopefully that kind of answers your question.
Yeah, you know what? I mean, it's really interesting to be, part of this group, And I was on the drive back home today to do this call, and I was thinking about, what can we talk about, and I think about the people that I'm surrounded with and the people that I work with or do business with or talk to. A lot of them have either been in Everest or have done base camp or have, we kind of speak the same language, which is really, really cool. I think it's really important when people are doing this type of personal work, they can relate with other people. But I mean, for me, there's really a challenge, right? I mean, it's great when I came back from Ireland, it was such a deep experience for myself, and I had so many realizations. What I wanted to walk away with was completely what I actually did walk away with. But the quality of my conversations changed, my thoughts, my feelings, the decisions that I made. I mean, just in the last 12 months, I've had so many different new experiences that I'm really grateful for. But I think one of the challenges I kind of wanted you to touch upon is what about when you're meeting people, right? Like, let's say you're trying to meet a woman, you're trying to meet a man, or like you're trying to get into a relationship or finding business partners, whatever it is. Some people, they're not. I mean, they haven't done their work. They haven't done that work on themselves. They're not self-aware in the same way. Like, how do you deal with it? Or, I mean, you have any thoughts on that?
Oh, tons. And I love, for the people who are listening to this, I love the fact that you didn't send me a list of questions. I had no time to prepare, and I'm sure you've prepared and have a frame, but I'm just, shooting from the hip here in a sense, which actually I love. Yeah, I mean, how many hours have you got? I could speak about this for all day long. The same principle applies when you're looking to meet a person in an intimate capacity, or whether it's something, you're looking to align with people who in a business capacity. And there's two kind of frames of thought, or two frames of feeling, is as I prefer to put it, because it is the difference between thinking intellectually and having knowledge versus actually having wisdom and feeling something. They're two completely different ways of living. Now, do you want to do business for the sake of it? Do you want to get, excuse my directness and ignorance, but do you want to get laid for the sake of it? Or do you actually want to align with somebody who is more of a soul partner, if you want, or if you want to do business with people you truly align with? They're very different approaches to life, and often, and I see this, hugely in the world today, and the developed world and Western society, is that we're all in, many of us are in relationships, and we think our relationship is great, or we think our relationship in our intimate relationship is excellent, or we think that it's fine. But what is our context for that? Unless you've been reincarnated and have a very vivid memory, very or clear memory of your life before, and you have context in terms of the relationships that you've been in, you don't really have context. And I'm assuming you're in your current relationship because the last one didn't work out. So at what point are we settling for what we think is great versus actually really pushing the boundaries a little bit and actually wanting something great or wanting something extraordinary? So I think I can probably best sum one of the approaches up in this capacity. I was talking to a lady recently, literally within the last couple of months, and I was doing what I thought was a decent job rambling through my view of being authentic and being aligned to who you are. She just summed it up in a minute and a half with this cool little story. So I could have saved myself a lot of energy and a lot of kind of sweat, and just had her kind of describe this. And what in essence she described was, she met somebody recently, she went out on a date, she is very interested in finding an intimate partner to share this extraordinary journey, or this journey of life with. But sometimes, people can be too attached to that. So they're so desperately looking for a partner to align themselves with and share this journey with, that they end up sacrificing or ignoring some of the subtleties and misalignments because they just really don't want to be lonely. So they end up compromising, what they want in a person, and end up then finding themselves in a relationship that simply doesn't serve them. And I see this all the time. But this particular lady went out on a date, and she put on makeup, and she put on a perfume and all the different stuff. And I'm not suggesting, and I'm not knocking any person, man or woman, who wears makeup or perfume heading out on a date. But for this person, for this particular woman, it's not who she is. She's more of a kind of, she just lives naturally. She doesn't she doesn't care too much if her hairs are gray, and she has a bit of gray coming through, and she's not that paranoid about it. But she found herself being like aware of the fact that she was putting on this uniform, this costume, to go out into society to meet somebody. And here's the ironic, spectacular kind of twist in essence in this story, and that is that when she went out and met this guy, they weren't really aligned. So when they kind of came to that conclusion verbally, and then the guard came down and the no bullshit, we're not trying to impress each other, then they just had this really informal kind of real conversation about, well, what are you looking for in a partner? And he went on to say, I'm not looking for someone who dolls himself up and wears makeup and puts on the perfume. And that's exactly the bloody thing she didn't want to be in the first place. So, she found herself compromising who she was at the core to try and impress somebody else. And yet, if she was just herself, I wonder what type of relationship she may actually bring into her life, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm. And you know what? You brought up the part about what she wants. I find that just, I mean, on top of that, a lot of people don't really know what they want.
They haven't a clue. They haven't
And
a
I think
clue.
they're out there chasing. I mean, you're getting dolled up, or you're asking people out, trying to get laid, or I mean, short-term work, recreational, or long-term commitment, right? Meaningfulness. But
Yeah.
there is a problem, I think, with a lot of people, even the people that I meet and or go on dates with. It's just they don't know what they want, and this is part of the problem that I'm talking to you about. It's like people don't know what they want. They don't know who they are. They haven't done that work, and I find myself. Like, I'm grateful for this, right? I find myself surrounded by really great people who kind of think the same language, speak the same language, and can meet me at the same levels of vulnerability. But it's like when it comes to like meeting new people, it's just like does it ruin it almost? Because like the standard is set so high, and I don't know.
Well, I don't know if you've ever seen Star Trek, and I probably immediately lost 50% of your audience to think, oh my God, he's a Star Trek fan,
He's
or
a
maybe
Trekkie. He's a
yeah,
Trekkie.
yeah, because to me, when I was growing up as a kid, it was kind of a sense of mystery and escapism that away from a life that to some extent I was struggling with internally. But anyway, they've this race of people, or this race of machine, which is half man, half machine, or 70% machine, 20% human, and it's called the Borg. And then what they do is they get you and they assimilate you and bring you into the collective, which is basically means that they plug you into their system, and you don't get to think for yourself, you don't get to feel, you just basically assimilate into society. And I think that's the world that we live in today. And the world is trying to assimilate you. It's trying to get you and make you like themselves, because what you do when you step outside of the norm is you're not odd and weird. What you're doing is you're actually pissing people off, because what you're doing is you're highlighting the ordinariness of that individual. And people hate that and they resent that, because what you're doing is you're challenging them subconsciously, you're challenging them indirectly in terms of living to live differently. And the cost of being aware, the cost of when we refer to this work, you and I get it, because it's about going on a personal journey and understanding who you are at the core for probably the first time in your entire existence. Comes at a cost. And the cost of that is that you do start to kind of see yourself, not in an arrogant sense, better than anybody else, but you start to see the world different, simply because you see
Hmm.
yourself in that world differently. You start to understand yourself differently. And it comes at a cost, because you start to feel a bit of a separation from the mundane conversations of hockey and weather. You start to kind of move
Oh,
away and start to demand within yourself, and therefore externally, real fucking conversation, excuse my
oh,
language, but like real
don't worry about that.
in-depth conversation. And it's not that we should not talk about hockey or the weather, but my God, we don't have to speak about it 365 goddamn days of the year.
I completely agree. And you know what? I think, uh, like to touch on that point, it's the fact that because I mean, for myself, I've done a lot of this work and I kind of know myself. And I don't know, the journey is never ending; it's constant, right? But it's like because you see other people living this mediocre existence or like speaking about mundane things, I could see myself in that. I could see like I participate in that in some sense, or I used to be that type of person. So it's like it's almost like because my head is so clear, I can see it and I can recognize my own self in that. It's like a lot of people that I work with have this need or want to fix other people or to change other people, and I gave up on that a long time ago. Unless they come to me and they ask for help, but I used to really want to be a catalyst and just change people and just almost shake them up and wake them up. But yeah, I think part of it is just because of that you can see that people can step up. People can be at a whole other level of awareness and existence if they just did that work. But you know what? We can't. I mean, we can't force people to. We can't try and convince them to. It's like you said, it's a personal journey. People need to discover it on themselves. But you know, a lot of people will start asking me, it's like, so how do I begin? And I think when people say, how do I begin, like this personal growth, this type of self-work, self-knowledge, and things like that, I think they've already started.
Yeah,
What do you
I
think? I
do.
think they've already started because they've questioned it, right? They're
I think they're searching, and there's something that is niggling at them. There's a what I call a whisper, and the whisper is, and again, it might sound a little soft and fluffy to some, but so be it. But the whisper is coming from your soul. It's coming from the internal, workings, and it's just a whisper. And what happens in society today, or what's been happening in society today, is that we're so busy that we're pushing ourselves away from that whisper into our heads, and we're listening to the shouts and the screams of the world, whether it's through Facebook, whether it's through Twitter, whether it's just staying busy. And busy people are hiding from something, and quite often they're hiding from that voice that's saying, "I know you're trying to tell yourself you're happy, but you know you're not." And what you're saying to your voice every day, but not just verbally speaking to yourself in the car, speaking to yourself in the tube station, or speaking to yourself in a bus and looking odd, you're not saying the words, but what you're doing is your actions are saying, "Shut your mouth. I don't need to hear you today. And I am happy. I know I'm happy. I mean, look, my friends tell me I'm happy, and I'm happier than John down the road. And look at me, I'm building
they
my
stuff it.
my they basically just put a duct tape across the mouth of the whisper. The
Hmm.
whispers come from your soul, and the other bullshit and the other paranoia and the other convincing is happening in your head. And you can only ignore that voice for so long, but it comes at an enormous cost. And the enormous cost are things like the midlife crisis, are things like depression, or things like alcohol abuse. And you can numb yourself for so long, but you will come back and it will haunt you to your grave if you ignore that whisper. And it's just a whisper. And the journey is understanding what the whisper is saying and allowing it to become a little bit more of a voice in your life, and trusting it more and more. And that's challenging to do. And the only thing I'll say about personal growth is that it's such a massive subject, and it comes with so many different kind of realms, genres, and everything else. And then of course you have so many different people doing it. And the challenge is that people step into an aspect of what they think is personal growth, and they may have a bad experience and then basically say, "Listen, it's all crap."
Hmm. Well, you know, it's just part of that noise, right? I mean, they're so un. I mean, that voice, that whisper, as you call it, is so stuffed. It's so suppressed that I mean, they think their that voice is society or their parents or their teachers or their friends or their coworkers, and like it's just so noisy, right? Like you're saying, like with Facebook and Twitter and things like that, we're always seeing people showing off that look what I just bought, look what I'm doing today, and it's just this huge marketing or sales pitch of this is who I am. And this is what they promote. Is that what you find as well?
Well, I mean, yeah, before I forget, by the way, I want to go back, if we can, for a moment, in a minute, if we can go back to, the people you referred to and said, "I know people that don't know what they want." And I have something fairly strong to say about that. If we have a
Yeah,
moment, I'd
yeah.
appreciate it. But just going on to the social media thing, I think social media, I think, and this is probably the first time I've said it publicly. It is the first time I've said it publicly. I believe if we haven't and are not all assimilated into Facebook, and Twitter and social media, and there's actually one or two kind of almost kind of souls that haven't been dragged into that area, and they have the ability to do a study. I think in about 20 years' time, we're going to look back and look at social media as one of the most detrimental human destructive, human interactive destructive tools and mechanisms the planet has ever seen. Now, let me back that up very quickly by saying, yes, I am a hypocrite because I'm on Facebook and Twitter, but it's not Facebook is the problem. Twitter is not the problem. Money is not the problem. It's our relationship to these devices. It's our relationship to these ways of exploring. It's our relationship to money is the dysfunctionality in many people's. It's not money is evil. It's our relationship to it. So, Time Magazine did an article, and I'm writing a new book, and I put it in the book a good few months ago. They did a lot of research around social media, and they asked a cross section of individuals, and I can't remember exactly the number, but I think it's almost approximately this. is they said, how many people do you believe actually, manipulate their profile to make themselves look more attractive, happy, and successful? And something like 76% of people said, yeah, I think basically people manufacture it. In other words, they're unauthentic, or in other words, they're essentially bullshitting and lying to us. But here's the fascinating piece, because that to me is just basically 76% of people think everyone else is full of crap. But here's the cool thing, or the sad thing, or the opportunity, is that asked were their profiles, their individual profiles, honest and real, and a real representation of who they are, they said 78% said them they were. So essentially, break that down into English. What does that mean? Most of us are saying everyone else is full of shit, but my profile is honest.
I am not.
I'm not. I'm the honest one. I'm the only honest one out there, in essence. And I think that is hugely prevalent of how unaware we are as human beings, and how.
So essentially,
go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, so essentially, everyone's being unauthentic or fake, but my profile on Facebook is authentic and real.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's pretty much what the stats showed up.
In their bubble.
Yeah, and I'm not suggesting that somebody listening to this today is unauthentic. I can't, and it wouldn't be arrogant and stupid enough to suggest that. But I think if we're open to the fact that we're not as authentic and aligned and truthful as we think we are, again, it's in our head, we have an opportunity to grow. But when we tell ourselves we're happy, tell ourselves we're real, tell ourselves we're authentic, convince ourselves that the job that we have is the right one for us, then we have this opportunity to settle, which is very sad.
Mm-hmm. I think settling is I always tell myself and tell clients, like, never ever settle. Never settle. I mean, you deserve what you truly desire. If it's real, if it's true to you, then you should go after and go get it. But yeah, I mean, I can't believe that statistic. I got to look that one up myself. That's really interesting. Now I'm self-conscious about my own Facebook profile.
It's not. Listen,
put me on the spotlight.
Yeah, and I'm the same. I mean, am I 100% truthful? I'd like to think I am, but I'm probably not. And that to me is an honest way of looking at it. But if you start to tell yourself that you're, oh no, definitely mine's 100%, well then then you're just missing this cool little opportunity. It's not to undermine you, but it's just to present this opportunity to serve you and keep yourself honest as much as you can.
Mm-hmm. And you know what? The interactions on Facebook have really changed. I mean, it's become this this way. I don't know if it was you who brought it up on Facebook, or I can't remember who it was, but it was essentially the fact that you can look at other people's profiles, you can see what's going on. Oh, this person had a baby, this person, just got a new house or whatever it is, and it's like it kind of what's happening in that person's life. So for you to pick up the phone or send them a message like one-on-one and say, hey, how's it going? It's kind of you're deterred from doing that because you already almost know what's happening in their life.
Yeah.
So it almost, instead of being like super connecting, it's because like you're already publicly sharing all this stuff. Someone doesn't have the opportunity to just inquire and be curious and say, hey, how's it going? What are you up to? What's new in your life? Instead, they just go on your newsfeed. Oh, this is what this person's up to. I don't need to talk to this person anymore. So it kind of disconnects us.
Yeah, anti-social media, as I call it.
Yeah, in a lot of ways. Yeah.
If we could just, and I don't want to, I mean, this is obviously your call, so you dictate, but if we can just go back to that thing about people not knowing what they want, I mean, I just call bullshit on that. And not to say that we don't create confusion and complexity to keep ourselves away from the clarity that we seek, but here's what I'm starting to feel and understand and see and witness, is that we don't necessarily want the clarity we say we want. Now, what the hell does that mean? What it means is that we often will tell ourselves that we don't have the clarity. But in actual fact, I have a fundamental belief, which is not the greatest business model in the world, considering what I do. However, I think it's a very empowering model, and that is that every single person knows exactly what they want. Now, somebody's going to be sitting on this, listening to this call today, and they're going to go, yeah, hang on a second, but I don't know what I want. Now, they're so busy telling themselves they don't know what they want that that's exactly where they're going to stay. But they do. And given the right tools or space and questioning and creating some space, the truth and what the person wants to do in their core, it's just no different than creating the space to allow the whisper to happen. Can they always do that on their own? I don't believe so. I couldn't. I certainly wasn't very successful in trying to figure out that whisper on my own. So I engaged with somebody to kind of extract and work with me and so on and so forth. And it's not an advertising for my business, the work you do, or et cetera, et cetera. I do believe that we need assistance in this world. But I still encourage people, irrespective of whether they can either afford or have the interest in finding, someone to work with, to consider that they do know what they want. But unfortunately for many, the lack of clarity is a safer place to be. If I could figure out what would make me happy, then I'd go and do it. If I could figure out what my purpose was, then I'd be happy, and so on and so forth. But often they do know what they want, but the consequences of chasing the thing that's in their soul are significant, because they feel the world will judge them, or their parents won't love them, or they won't be able to achieve it and they'll fail, or whatever happens. The biggest one is, do I deserve to actually do the thing that I really, really want to do in my soul?
And that is one of my favorite quotes that you have, is we give ourselves what we feel we deserve.
Absolutely. It's probably one of the most aligned quotes. And when I say aligned, I mean aligned to what I fundamentally believe, is that we give ourselves what we feel we deserve. The person who's in a poor relationship and having the guy or the girl cheat on them and just constantly going back for more, is the guy the bastard for cheating, or is that person somewhat, I'm not suggesting the behavior is okay, somewhat responsible for allowing themselves to be disrespected? I absolutely believe that when you take responsibility, it empowers you. If you look at the debt crisis, and I'm not here to speak about the flow of money and the economic reality of the world that we live in, but if you look at the debt crisis across the world at the moment, and I can speak for Ireland for certain, and I can speak for many parts of the US and so on, is that people are too busy blaming the government and the banks for overlending and allowing the lending to but very few people are taking their part of the responsibility, just their part of the responsibility, and saying, yeah, I signed the mortgage documentations, I use my car as an ATM, I use my home as a... So if we can take a piece of ownership and responsibility, then we grow. Otherwise, we're just going to spend our time pointing fingers at people.
Well, all that stuff, when we're blaming, political leaders, or you're blaming, other organizations, these faceless corporations, or the government, or whatever it is, it's like those things are a byproduct of us. They are an effect of us as individuals. So I mean, people are looking in the wrong place when they're pointing the finger outside of their own self. They should look in the freaking mirror.
Yeah, and even on that, if you go back to the silly but very real analogy I use about the Borg and the assimilated world that we live in today, I announced recently that I don't vote, and there was a couple of people that were astounded by that, and mainly from Ireland, because there's this notion that people died to give me the opportunity to vote. I don't believe people died to give me an opportunity to vote. People died perhaps to protect a country, or give me some sort of kind of human freedom. If you think that people died to give me a vote to a system that I don't believe in, that is run by an assimilated society that wants you to be no different than everybody else, I don't believe that, and I don't believe politics, and I don't believe necessarily religion is going to save us as an individual. There's a space for that in our lives, but we as an individual have so much more control in our own existences than we believe. And I'm fine with somebody believing in God; that's up to them. But by God, please find a place in your life to believe in yourself, because people will walk this world believing in a God or many gods without hesitation, and yet will walk this earth for 70, 80, 100 years and never believe in themselves.
And I think the government is just another form of God as well to them. It's just this other belief system where, and you know what, I don't vote either. I just think that whatever they do and say that they are doing, not in my name, whatever it is that they do, I'm not like, I feel that voting is like saying that they're doing it in my name, or I'm condoning it or sanctioning it in some capacity. So no, I completely agree with you on that.
And then somebody will say, well, I mean, unless you vote, it's never going to change. I completely disagree. I think your vote might go for a better person within the same broken system, but it's never going to change until enough of us turn around and say, no, we're not voting because we don't believe in the system. And I look at it differently, and I look at a lot of things differently. I look at education not necessarily differently, but I believe that the education system hasn't served us as people. Do you know anyone, and of course you probably do, but do you know anyone who loved school or thought school served them, or school built them up and gave them the life skills they want? Yet every one of us, almost every one of us, or many of us, will put our kids on a school bus to the same goddamn prison or system that we went to, which didn't serve us, wave down the road at them saying, happy, have a great day, son, and have a great day, love. And their answer to it, and I'm not suggesting I have the answer either. It's not about having the answer, but it's about questioning the system. The answer is, well, there's no other alternatives, or the alternatives are expensive, the alternatives don't work.
That's a lazy answer. That's a lazy answer.
It's a lazy answer, but we are operating on autopilot to such an extent that I don't think the world has ever. We think we're independent. We say things because we see it on Facebook. We think it's a cool, sexy quote. That we've never had such opportunities in the history of mankind, and yet I believe that never before have we been so controlled and assimilated and working on autopilot.
Well, you know what? And it takes how many years? I mean, even if you're willing to wake up or question it, it takes you, after the 12 or 18 years of indoctrination into the system that is manufacturing a certain type of person that fits into the machinery of the system. It takes a lot of work. I mean, you got to hire coaches, counselors, psychiatrists, psychologists, different therapists, or even just journaling or whatever it is, just to kind of deprogram and recondition yourself from all of the broken noise that that we've been indoctrinated with.
Yeah, I mean,
which is okay for you and I for our work, but.
Yeah, no, but I look at that and I say to myself, okay, so with respect, I hear like, oh my God, that's insurmountable, and it's a lot of people, and it's a lot of work and everything else. And yeah, I mean, one could argue that it is, but I look at it and say, even if someone took a step to the left or to the right and just stepped outside of the box a little bit and just start subtly questioning one part of their life or one aspect of their life, I think that it's better than just staying in a system and assuming that life is going to look after you and assuming that everything's going to work out. So, there's going all out, and there's, self-exploratory, avenues, and self-exploration can take for many, many years. But I wouldn't be encouraging people to jump out and spend 3 or 4 years in this journey of self-exploration, but I'd be certainly encourage them to spend a day in a year, or an hour in a week, or
just to begin,
a half day in a month, just to stop and question, even on their own.
I think the questioning is really important, and you know what? I heard this one analogy of that where, what time in your life do you not have to worry about anything? Everything is taken care of for you. You don't have to take responsibility for anything. You're fed, you're warm, you got food, you got shelter. It's when you're a baby, when you're a child, when you're dependent on others, and it's like, and then I look at people walking around, and it doesn't matter what age you are, there are people who are walking around and they're still children, they're adult children. They haven't developed psychologically, emotionally, they haven't had that self-awareness. They may have grown up into an adult human being body, but in their head, in their hearts, in their souls, they're not, they haven't matured, they haven't grown, and that's what's happening. You have these people dealing with each other's, childhood traumas and things like that, like from the past, that they haven't looked at or shined a light on.
Yeah,
I think that's what I really appreciate about from your work is that, I mean, it was one of the first times that I've really looked deeply into how some of my childhood has affected me. I mean, into patterns and my ways of being and things like that. So I mean, that was really important for my growth and who I am now.
And that's just one kind of part of the philosophy that I stand for and believe in. And again, it's if I had a dollar bill for everybody that came to me, so I've done that work and I've been there before, but they're still hitting the same walls that they've been hitting in the past, and the same patterns keep popping up, and so they may have done the same work, but do they intellectually know the difference, or are they actually there's a difference between thinking and knowing. And knowing is that deep sense of feeling something as opposed to intellectualizing something. Because I can tell you something, so no, I know that, and you're like a little parrot. And you go, no, I know. But if you can be moved fundamentally, and I hate note takers at my experiences. I don't mind people capturing things, but people sitting in front of me taking notes, they're intellectually capturing something so they can go back and take the notes off the shelf when they, in a week or 2 weeks or 6 months. I want them to fundamentally shift emotionally, internally, in the room or in the experience. So therefore, they don't ever have to look at a note for the rest of their days. They fundamentally know in their essence and their beings. And I think that's the saddest thing that I see in this world of personal growth is the seminar A, which is basically, come to work with us, and we give you the 970,000 page manual of how to live the most authentic, perfect life, and the 7,685 steps. And by the way, next year we'll offer you the step that we forgot to offer you this year because we found the new secret. Or is there this work that can be done that is self-exploratory, and you understand? Going back to, again, the people that you and I both know, and everyone knows them, that don't know what they want, or someone listening on this call right now who's barely just holding on because the Star Trek thing really freaked them out, but they're barely holding on to the words because they trust you and they follow you and they believe you. And they're still not 100% sure whether this is some sort of mad wacko cult or whether there's something legitimate in this. If they go back and they understand themselves a lot more, I have a belief that in there comes the clarity. How many people have you met and says, if I could just find out what would make me happy, if I could just find out what I'm passionate about, if I could find out, like that guy there, what he loves, then I'd be happy. But they're all missing one commonality in all of those statements. I, me, myself. Understand who you are, and you cannot but find out what you should be doing. And I don't mean should, but what you're aligned to. You can only find the truth when you face it.
Mm-hmm. For some reason, that reminds me of this Ayn Rand quote where she says something like, to be able to say I love you, there first must be the I. There must be the I. I mean, the self, right? People need to know themselves.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Now, I mean, so to take it a step further, I guess, and kind of to transition a little bit, you're talking about this, like the seminars, the junkies. I mean, I have a couple of binders sitting right there, but I feel like society almost kind of feel like we have this sense or this feeling that we have to acquire things, like it's material things, like the note taker. It's because they want to take the notes, they want to put it on paper, and they want to put it on their shelf. They want to just have this collection, this physical material collection. Like we can solve things or we can be happy by acquiring things. And this year you've really, I mean, you really stepped up and you changed that, and it's completely different from taking something with you, and it's the give and grow. It's going to an experience and giving. And I mean, I wish I could have made it. I know a couple of people who went on that trip. Could you kind of share a little bit about the story as to how that came about?
Yeah, I think the backstory is probably as important as the story itself. And the backstory is that, I believe that it's our compulsion, our obsession with knowledge that is causing part of the problem. Now here's a guy who's writing a book and scared shitless about the book because I'm dyslexic and I'm scared about it and everything else. But leaving that aside, and I'm not here trying to promote it, but I'm trying
and
to.
That's like your
promote
fourth book or fifth book. And you're
yeah,
still
and I'm probably gonna write 20 books. But I mean, but the thing about it is that we're consumed by information, and if you think about it, and this feeds into the give and grow in many respects, is that never before have we had such access to information and such ease of access to information through laptops and iPads, etc. And never before has there been such information, and yet never before have we been so disconnected. So like, information is not the answer. So note taking is not the answer. And for the heady people, again, and there's always a couple, and if you're sitting here listening to this call, you know who you are. The heady people who always need to know. My heart goes out to the people who always need to know, because that is a curse. It is an absolute curse. There's a gift in it because they're analytical and they can analyze things and break things down. But the need to always know and not to trust intuitively, part of who you are and where you're going, I think is really sad. And it prevents us from actually kind of living from a fluency perspective and living in a flow and allowing life to unfold almost. So I'm a huge believer in experiences to kind of really stir the soul. And you mentioned Ireland. We bring in all sorts of things in Ireland, whether it's music and nature and storytelling and so on and so forth, to stir the imagination, and art and so on and so forth. Give and Grow, the vision for Give and Grow is, in essence, I suppose it is what it says in the tin. You give unconditionally, being the word, unconditionally, and the theory being that in some shape or form you grow exponentially as a result of that. The concept came from and was inspired by a trip I did to Sri Lanka many years ago with my wife. I always say 8 or 10 years because I'm disastrous with dates, but I think she reminded me recently it was about 12 years ago. I just was flabbergasted of how much that experience impacted me for many, many years to come. And it wasn't until, and I'd be lying to say that, oh my God, at that moment I was inspired and I always knew, and on my vision board was this Give and Grow experience 10 years later, I'd be full of crap. But I never believed how much that stirred my imagination, and it burnt an imprint, like an image in my soul. And I think life leaves clues like that. So in essence, this year we went to Guatemala. We brought down, I think it was 9 of us went down. And we basically worked with an orphanage for 4 days. And then we took space intentionally to allow the experience percolate. And in this case, what we did is we got to nature and we climbed a mountain. And it was, I mean, I'm not just saying this because for any other purpose other than the fact that this is my truth, is that it was off the charts. It blew every expectation I ever had out of the water. And I'm a pretty high expectation guy when it comes to creating experiences for people. And what separated it from kind of a traditional volunteer experience is that we processed what this was meaning to you and why was it impacting you and why were you emotional, or why did this girl or this little boy impact you so much? What part of you could you see in them? And it was the experience of giving, growing, the twist of adventure that we had, but the processing that framed it all together that I believe brought the magic to the table. And the people that came down were just beautiful people, beautiful souls. And I think talking to them that they all had an off the chart experience that I think is going to continue to give for many, many years to come for them.
I think, I mean, from the pictures and from the conversation so far, I mean, and from knowing, having been part of your experiences, I know it changed lives, and it's a powerful, it's part of a powerful ripple effect that you've created. I mean, there's so many people that I see that have worked with you or who are working with you, and the amazing things that they're doing to share and to continue. It's almost like they're paying it forward, right? Like you helped catalyze a lot of these people into giving their gift and sharing what they love to do and impacting the world in their way. So it's really, I mean, how do you handle that?
Well,
Is it hard to accept that? Is it hard to receive that? That is, I mean, not like, I mean, you're a catalyst, right? You played a role
it
in a
is
lot
very
of these
difficult to
lives.
receive. It's very difficult for me to own that. And here's the cool thing about that. And here's the big upside of that inability to accept the type of gratitude that people and emphasis that people put on the work that I do. So, for example, 9 or 10 of my clients right now have written books. Have they written books because of me? Not necessarily. I don't believe. Have they written the types of books because of me? Not necessarily. But some of the acknowledgements and from their point of view, and even in their forwards in their books and stuff like that, not forwards, but in their acknowledgements in their books, have been to some extent over complimentary in terms of my influence within in the context of their lives. But here's something magic though, Oliver, and here's the piece that people don't stop to understand. Sometimes people judge me, sometimes people have a go at, well, sorry, a lot of people judge me and a lot of people have a go with me, but very few people stop to ask me why and understand why I do certain things. And one of the things that I think I'm really, really good at is giving the ownership of the work back to the individual. And it was never a strategy. It was never designed. I never sat down consciously and considered that. It was something I've always done. And here's the huge upside of that, is it doesn't allow me to get lost in the work. It doesn't allow the ego to take over to what I'm doing. If I can turn to Oliver and I can turn to John and I can turn to Ian and I can turn to Mary and I can go, look what you did. Look what you did. 2 things happen. It empowers them to a level that was never previously there before. 2, they don't become reliant on me and feel that, unless they're working with me for 25 years, they're going to be lost. And number 3 is that it protects the shit out of my ego, because I don't start to believe that I'm the all-seeing eye. And therefore get lost, as many people in this industry do, by thinking, putting up onto a pedestal, and start believing that they start believing their own shit, that they're the only one that can save people's lives. And I think actually it turns out to be a
I think that's a
brilliant
danger.
strategy.
Yeah.
It's a huge danger. It's one of the things that scares the shit out of me is losing myself in this work and beginning to believe that I'm something more than I am. And it's so prevalent in this industry. It's staggering.
Hmm. It's like you're a regular guy, you
Well,
know.
I mean, that's all relative.
You're an oddball, but
I'm completely odd. I mean, I've
no, I mean
embraced
like you're
that now.
human, right? Like you're human, and some people put people on a pedestal or put you on a pedestal. You know, he's perfect and has a great, amazing life and things like that. But it's I think what did you say? You had something. You had some sort of saying about when you put someone on a pedestal, it means it's also like saying I'm not enough. Or how
Yeah,
did you put that?
whether you put somebody on a pedestal, whether it's an inch or a mile high, you're saying one thing and one thing only. Not that they're better than you or that you look up to them, whatever. You're simply saying that I am not enough. So the person putting somebody onto a pedestal is simply just disrespecting themselves. And I think it's a disgusting thing to do and to allow people to do and to put you on a pedestal. And you pay both parties pay a huge price because one person doesn't feel they're significant and the other person thinks they're too significant. But just going back to, and again, I don't want to make this about my work, but I think what's becoming the biggest evolution for me over the last 12 months, and I've always believed there's no greater power than the power of an individual story, not because one person's story is more significant than anybody else's, but simply because there's no story in the world more significant than your story, and the reason being is because it's yours. So my
Hmm.
story is the most significant story in the world. Is it better than Nelson Mandela's story? Is it as powerful as Mother Teresa's? Is it as great as I don't know, Matt Damon? No, but it's the most significant story because it's mine. And I've gotten to a point where I own my story, and a lot of people don't own their story, and therefore they don't own the power and significance of it. And what's happening, Oliver, for me is I believe that there's ultimately this evolution for people when they work on themselves, they have an opportunity to understand their gift. And at the end, the greatest therapy, the greatest growth for them starts to get summed up by this ability to bring it back to the world. And what I'm doing right now is the work is going to be the work, the exploration, but the next evolution of the work where it's expanding to is now bringing people's gifts to the world through give and grow and elevation. And I'm starting to kind of basically extract people's stories and actually kind of pushing them and nudging them and encouraging them to actually share and give back. And the Real Summit, which is something that this is, again, the first time I'm mentioning this, is going to be launched in 2014. And it's not about me and my big ego. It's about bringing the clan and members of the clan to a stage to share their story, to impact people in a
Hmm.
way that has never been done before.
That's really cool. I can't wait. Sounds like it's going to be a really good year. So when does the book come out?
The book, we could have forced it for Christmas, but we chose not to because I don't want to force it and get it wrong. But the book is going to be out. It's called Rich on Paper, Poor on Life. And it's going to be
Mhm.
out in, I would imagine, January 2014. So next month.
Next month already. Wow.
Yeah.
So people are going to be able to order that on Amazon or at their local bookstore, things like that, or
Yeah,
on
no,
your
it's going to be,
website.
I'm self-publishing. I've done some books with John Wiley,
Oh,
but I'm
okay.
self-publishing this one. It's going to be on Amazon. It's going to be a hard
Excellent.
copy. I'm not doing digital for the moment. It'll be a hard copy and people can order it on Amazon.
And before we finish the call, would you mind sharing a little bit about the premise of the book and what uh, they can look forward to?
Yeah, but basically, and thank you for that. I suppose
Dead Man Walking, Rich on, is that Rich on Paper? What did you say, Dead Man Walking? Or sorry, that's
Dead Man
another
Walking
book.
is just Dead Man Walking is a short ebook I did on a subject of
Yeah.
getting out of your head and
Rich
into
on
your heart.
Paper,
Rich on paper, poor on life.
Poor on Life. Okay.
And basically, the premise behind it is it's inspired by the Celtic Tiger, of how 4.5 million people, my fellow countrymen and women in Ireland, chased money and allowed themselves to lose a lot of themselves and compromise a lot of their core values in that process. And it's basically stopping people and challenging them to align themselves in a more meaningful way in three different areas of their life: work, self, and others. The work that they do, the relationship with themselves, and the relationship with other people. And essentially, they're the three fundamental pillars. So what I've done is I've taken 15 real life stories inspired by real people, except we've just changed the names to protect their identities. and each story is uniquely designed to inspire an individual look at an aspect of their lives to deepen that journey and to become more aligned with who they are. So inspired by somewhat of an economic negative experience, but bringing inspiring stories of how people have fundamentally changed aspects of their lives to create more meaning and more peace of mind and more happiness and more money. Money is not the evil thing here in the book by any stretch of the imagination, but it's just putting money in its place. It's not allowing money to be the driver.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. I can't wait to pick that one up and have a read and let you know what I think.
Cool. Thank you for that.
Great. Well, I don't want to take too much more of your time. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing some of your wisdom and insight. I know the people listening to this right now are probably gonna, listen back again, and regardless of what we say, they're probably gonna take notes. They're probably gonna take some of these big ideas. But I really hope that maybe we can reconnect again and have you on again sometime in the near future. Maybe when the book has been launched and whatnot. But in the meantime, thank you very much. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing.
And likewise, and I appreciate the invitation, and I appreciate what you do and what you stand for. And I think what I love about you is that you're one of the real ones that you don't claim to know it all. You've worked upon yourself. You don't claim to know that all either. And you're legitimately, I think when you're you're interjecting with individuals and communicating with individuals in any capacity, particularly when it comes to their own personal journey. I think we have a moral obligation to work on ourselves, and I know you've done that with me and other people. So from that point of view, I'm grateful, and I also think the people who are listening and follow and engage with you are very lucky to have somebody who's genuine and has done the work of themselves as a guide. And so I admire and appreciate you for doing that. So thank you.
Wow, those are very kind words. Thank you very much, Philip.
Okay. Thanks, Oliver.
All right, thank you.
Take care.